All right, our regularly scheduled council meeting for Tuesday, November 2nd is now in session. Would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Clark.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman.
Here.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember Trujillo.
Here.
Oh, sorry. Would you rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, you all have the agenda in front of you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seems none, the agenda is approved as submitted. Minutes for the meeting of October 12th. Changes, updates? Then those are approved as submitted. Minutes for October 19th. Then those are approved as submitted.
Sensing we're on a roll.
We are on a roll. Any new employees?
No, sir, not tonight.
Okay. And that brings us to guest citizens. Peggy, would you do our guest citizens, please?
Okay, you're going to go down there?
I will.
Okay. Well, I'm honored, and I hope that I pronounce people's names correctly, but I'll read this here. The Littleton City Council is pleased this evening to recognize students, teachers, and administrators from McIntosh Academy for winning a $500 Disney's Friends for Change grant. McIntosh Academy is one of 75 successful applicants around the world to receive the grant. Disney's Friends for Change is a program that encourages young people to take steps with their friends to better the environment. The grants, administered by Youth Service America, offer youth the resources they need to bring in environmental initiatives to life for their local communities. The youth-led projects are structured to occur around and in honor of National Public Lands Day each September. McIntosh's winning program, called Remains of the Day, Composting for Life, is student-led and focused on reducing the food waste generated at school during lunch hour. The goal is to turn lunch waste into composted materials and beautify the school's existing flower beds with improved soil and organic fertilizer. And I add something here. After this first year, as I understand, doing the compost for the flower gardens, they'll master all the skills involved, and then we'll progress to growing things that can be eaten. Each student in 5th and 6th grade classes has a leadership role in rallying support and participation in the initiative. Through focused curriculum and recent instruction from a master gardener, students have become educated in the science behind the decomposition of food and how to facilitate and encourage that same education among other students. The Littleton City Council congratulates you all and encourages you to keep up the good work. And I'll read your names, and you want them to step forward as I read them. Mary Munch, Student Grant Award winner. Sharon Munch, Mary's mother and compost curriculum coordinator. Joe Posbach, Allison Weems, Molly Kieschnick, and Angela Munt, the 5th and 6th grade teachers representing themselves and accepting on behalf of the 5th and 6th grade students.
No problem.
Well, let us get caught up here. Hunter Lawrence, Lucia Rose, Maddie Gruzak, Aria Mariza, and Jade Rose, the Student Service Council. Greg Ashworth, Inspiration for Composting at School. Renu Rose, McIntosh Academy Head of School. And Jennifer Purdom, McIntosh Academy Development Director.
Squeeze in, squeeze in, squeeze in.
Last year, my family started composting at my house. I found how easy and effective it is. I wanted to do more composting at McIntosh. Over the summer, I applied for a grant from Disney's Friends for Change program, which would allow us to start a lasting program at McIntosh. We purchased a large industrial-grade composter that is student and animal-friendly.
Mayor, I wanted to just chime in real quick. Our oldest son, Jay, was an alumnus of McIntosh Academy, and this really takes me back as far as the, out-of-the-box thinking and the creativity of the curriculum and the real quality of the institution. So congratulations, and thanks for coming in.
All right, that brings us to unscheduled public appearances. And before I go on, you all are welcome to leave anytime you want to. You can stay the whole meeting, and it will be exciting, but you could leave if you choose.
Nearly as exciting as the election results tonight.
Yes. Which brings us to unscheduled public appearances, which is a time for anybody to come down and ask us any questions or give us any comments. Opinions, advice. Seeing none, that brings us to our consent agenda, which are items that can be adopted by a single motion or simple motion, rather usually non-controversial. The first one is a resolution approving the Business Improvement District for Aspen Grove. You could read that by title, please.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving the 2011 operating plan and budget for the Aspen Grove Business Improvement District.
The Aspen Grove Business Improvement District was created to fund streets, drainage, sewage, lights, landscaping, and things like this. Council is required to approve their budget each year. This year's budget has them making a $800,000 or so payment for the debt service, and then contemplates another $800,000 or so payment for debt service in 2011. Next item is 7B, a resolution approving a contract with Dr. Cog, and I'm going to pull that. 7C is a ordinance on first reading to amend the city's floodplains.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending provisions of the city code regarding floodplain regulations.
Yes, and I should have said amending the city's floodplain regulations. The federal government administers something called the National Flood Insurance Program. This is available for property owners within the boundaries of floodplains to obtain flood insurance. However, local governments must comply with certain criteria. One of them is that we need to upgrade our maps. This would upgrade our maps to the new types of mapping, GIS-based mapping, and in the process of going through that, the staff looked at some other changes that needed to be done to the floodplain regulations. This would result in a cost increase for new development or improvements to existing development that's in the floodplain, but it would be no cost for existing development in the floodplain that's not going through any kind of improvements. And the second hearing, or public hearing and second reading, is scheduled for November 16th. Next is 7D, which is our annual appropriation ordinance. You can read that by title, please.
This is an ordinance to be known as the Annual Appropriation Bill for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, Counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2011, and ending December 31, 2011.
I want to pull that.
Okay, this is pulled. 7E is a resolution authorizing an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Littleton and Urban Drainage and Flood Control.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, authorizing an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District for construction of drainage and flood control improvements on Littles Creek between West Lake Avenue and West Cayley Avenue.
This intergovernmental agreement was first entered into by Littleton in 2007. This amendment would change some amounts, adding an additional $30,000 for the City of Littleton's commitment, making the total project cost $1,080,000. Item 7F is a resolution authorizing a license agreement between the City of Littleton and Denver Water.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, authorizing a license agreement between the city and the Denver Water Department for RAP channel stabilization and wing walls within Highline Canal right-of-way.
That's also known as riprap.
I wasn't going to say that.
Well, those of you that are on the canal, travel the canal or Lee Gulch, know that the Highline Canal crosses over the top of Lee Gulch in a culvert. This would do some work in that area. In order to do that, we need a license from Denver Water because that's on their property. Urban Drainage and Flood Control will be paying for this, and this creates a resolution approving the license with Denver Water. 7G is a resolution approving a conceptual design for South Platte River.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving an intergovernmental agreement with Urban Drainage and Flood Control District and South Suburban Parks and Recreation for drainage and flood control improvements for conceptual planning of the South Platte River improvements within South Platte Park.
The goal here is to do 3 demonstration projects attempting to improve certain aspects of South Platte River within the park. In order to do that, Urban Drainage Flood Control District and the Army Corps of Engineers require a conceptual design to be completed. This would be paid for by Urban Drainage and Flood Control, Colorado Watershed Restoration, and Trout Unlimited together. And our next one is 7H, a resolution of the City Council approving an intergovernmental agreement with Arapahoe County relating to case service management.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving the intergovernmental agreement with Arapahoe County relating to community service case management.
This intergovernmental agreement would be a agreement between us and Arapahoe County, where Arapahoe County Judicial Services, we would use their services to implement some of our community service needs for the city.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the approval of consent agenda items A, C, E, F, G, H.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda except for 7D and 7B. Discussion?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay, that brings us to 7B, which is the resolution approving a contract with Dr. Cog for the purchase of traffic cabinets.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, authorizing a contract between the city and the Denver Regional Council of Governments for the purchase of traffic signal cabinets as part of the Traffic Signal System Improvement Plan.
Charlie, you want to give a very quick description?
Denver Regional Council of Governments, otherwise known as DRCOG, has awarded us a grant of $24,000 to replace traffic signal cabinets on Bellevue Avenue between Windermere and Prince Street. It's not just the physical cabinet, which is that big box that sits on the corner, but it also includes all of the components that go into that box, including the controller that is tied into our master traffic signal computer. This comes to us with no strings. It's actually federal money routed to DRCOG that comes to us. And we will then purchase the cabinets by bid in 2011 and have them installed. And we can buy 3 of these for the $24,000 that has been awarded to us from the Council of Governments.
Questions of Charlie?
Charlie, excuse me. Sorry. These will have battery backups. Now, a lot of our traffic signal cameras do not have that right now, so this would be a big advantage to have the battery backup.
Absolutely. These 3 will have the batteries as a part of it. There are some locations, Littleton, without battery backups only because they're either extremely minor locations or they actually relate to a pedestrian crosswalk or a school signal. Those don't have battery backups, but all the rest of the major signals in Littleton are battery operated in the event of a power outage. These 3 would be included with battery backups.
Okay, Council, any other questions for Charlie? Reason I pull this is because I have a problem with a section of the contract having to do with indemnification. If somebody wants to make a motion to approve the whole thing, then I will make a motion to take out the second paragraph under indemnification on page 7.
I'll start then. I move that the resolution to enter into a contract with the Denver Regional Council of Governments to receive funds from DRCOG under the Traffic Signal System Improvement Program for 3 new traffic signal cabinets be approved, and that the council president be authorized to affix his signature thereto.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution approving the contract with DRCOG for the traffic signal cabinets. Council, I'm going to move that we strike the second paragraph under section 14 titled indemnification on page 7. It's the paragraph that begins, to the extent allowable by law, the contractor shall indemnify, save, and hold harmless DRCOG. And the reason I have for doing that is because it's unconstitutional.
I'll second it because I'm curious as to what that means.
Good. Well, unconstitutional means
State or federal?
state. And actually, Article 11, Section 1, which is titled Pledging Credit of State, County, City, Town, or School District Forbidden, says that neither the state nor any county, city, town, township, or school district shall lend or pledge the credit or faith thereof, directly or indirectly, in any manner to or in aid of any person, company, or corporation, public or private, for any amount or for any purpose whatever, or become responsible for any debt, contract, or liability of any person, company, or corporation, public or private, in or out of the state. And if you read down into the annotations, it says construction of the section, this section is to be construed as prohibiting a town or city by its own voluntary corporate act from pledging its credit to or becoming responsible for any debt, contract, or liability in the aid of a third party, which is exactly what this paragraph in the contract is asking us to do. Basically, the Colorado Constitution does not allow us as a city to indemnify anybody. Anybody that is a person, company, corporation, public or private, for any amount. and Dr. Cog is a corporation.
Charlie or Suzanne, do you see any problems in the elimination of this paragraph?
Well, if under my legal comments in the council communication, I did note this issue. We routinely get these contracts. We ask the other entities to remove indemnification, and I had emailed the mayor earlier this morning. Dr. Cog and CDOT are two of the agencies that we routinely have no luck with removing these clauses. When it's a contract that has a give and a take, the party that you're asking to remove the indemnification is a lot more likely to do so. But a lot of times with CDOT and Dr. Cog, it's tied to funding, grants, and they just won't do it. And so we've asked them, and in this case we asked them specifically again, could that be removed? I know that with CDOT, there is a group organized through CML that's trying to work with the Attorney General's office to get that language removed going forward with their contracts. I don't know if there's any such movement to try to get Dr. Cog to remove the language. When we did go back, they added the to the extent permitted by law, because it's our view that it's not permitted.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's really a legal risk type issue from my perspective. I signed off as to the form, but made the note of the conflict in my legal comments because, in my opinion, if we were ever asked to indemnify them, the court would interpret this to say it was limited to the extent permitted by law and it wasn't permitted by law. And so I think that that language does offer us some protection. I agree with the mayor fundamentally that we cannot indemnify other agencies. And in this case, we went back. They said no. So now it's before council to decide whether Charlie tells me we've done a few already and over the last few years and haven't had an issue with it. I mean, I'm not sure where indemnification would really come up, but I think we're using our own subcontractors, so I'm not sure what their issue is with the language.
Did we have any discussion with them whether the removal of this paragraph is going to be problematic from their perspective?
Yes, and they said they won't remove it. In the past, they used to send us intergovernmental agreements, and for about 2 years we argued with them that they weren't a government. So now they finally call them contracts. So we got that far, but we can't get the indemnification language out.
Jim?
Well, working somewhat with various members of the Transportation Commission and the director of CDOT, I can understand where they're coming from on their point. And I believe that the first 6 words of that paragraph, to the extent allowable by law, is going to give us some protection. And when we get into a court, if it ever gets to a court hearing, I think we've got very valid arguments to allow us to prevail in court. And I have no problem with leaving it in there, knowing that there is a group going to be trying to change this in the next legislature. And I think all it does is just raise lots of red flags that we don't need to have raised about Littleton.
Further discussion? I guess my point is that Dr. Cog is a member organization. We are a member of the organization. They are distributing tax dollars that are collected by the citizens. They are doing something that they know is in violation of the Constitution, and putting a escape clause in the front of a paragraph that shouldn't be in there really doesn't fix the problem. Now, if we had some sway with somebody that was on the board, we might be able to get someplace.
Just because I'm the incoming chair of Dr. Cog, you're not going to sway me off of this argument.
Charlie, what's the timing on this? If we would take another 2 weeks to go through this to see where they're going to be at?
2 weeks, excuse me, 2 weeks won't have a dramatic effect. If I tell you how this works, we go out to bid and we actually buy the cabinets. And if they come in too expensive, we don't buy 3, we just buy 2. Although our knowledge tells us that we will have plenty of money to buy all 3. We then ask for reimbursement from Dr. Cog, and since this, I believe, is the 3rd time that we have gone through this program and received money for traffic signal cabinets, the money is sent to us upon request. We put it in with the revenue with the department and go about our business. And it's literally as simple as that. They have told us in conversation with Suzanne that they will not change the contract and take that section out. So I don't know what to do. We could say we're not going to approve it with this part in it, and they give the money to somebody else, or we take whatever risk there is and saying, okay, we're not going to worry about the indemnification.
And council, this is in every contract with every city in the metro area. So if you know, as a point of principle, in 2 weeks, I can tell you, Councilman Cernanek, the answer's not going to change. But if you feel like you want to make the effort, make a symbolic effort, it's not a big, there's no damage to us. We'll just be back here in 2 weeks with the same answer.
Exactly the same thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Bruce?
So I guess two questions. Is there anything you could put in here or just even asterisk this section, leave it in, but put a notation or an annotation as an addendum explaining this and then sign it and send it back to them? At least we've got a copy of our logic for saying that we've got some representation that we don't believe there's any substance to this thing if it ever came up to that level.
Well, I mean, I think they know that, which is why they added in the to the extent permitted by law. But
I guess what I'm trying to do is embellish it. I mean, it's sort of to a certain extent, I mean, it's caught between a rock and a hard place.
right.
Or the horns of a dilemma. Pick your own.
Right. I mean, we can try to do, you know, whatever council wants. I can tell you that to the extent permitted by law wasn't in there before. And we just asked, well, if you won't take it out, can we at least modify it so the court will know that we were cognizant of the fact that we were entering into it, knowing that Article 11 existed. So, I mean, maybe we could say to the extent permitted by Article 11. I mean, I don't know. I find it very frustrating because, you know, they should know better, but we just can't get any movement on it. So,
Well, I guess the other side of the whole thing is, what if you just struck through it and signed it and sent it to them? They wouldn't countersign it?
That's what my amendment is. Then they can choose whether they want to have a fight over this.
yeah.
Oh, as
Then-
opposed to get them to, I see what you're saying.
I mean,
Then Jim can take it up with the board. Then if the board decides that they don't want to instruct their own staff to follow the Constitution, or they decide that they don't want to give us the cabinets, then we can decide what we want to do about that.
So if I'm sorry, go ahead.
But basically, what's happening is Dr. Cog, that we're a member group of,
Yeah.
that's supposed to be a regional thing, is doing something that they know that violates the Constitution and refusing to budge on it because they have the money, even though it's the money that's collected from our taxpayers that goes to the federal government.
I apologize. I was thinking you were trying to get them to go back and revise it as opposed to we just strike it out and send it to them. So I
We just
understand what
strike
you're
it out
saying.
and send it to them.
If we do that, Suzanne, we get a phone call and basically they say we're not going to do this, and then we get to revote on it if we want to go forward, kind of thing.
Or they just reject it and they say, okay, we'll give the money to somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the formula is based on. I don't know if they're mandated to, what the mandate is to give it to the municipalities.
This is pass-through money from federal transportation. So,
From a practical standpoint, and I understand the mayor's concern, I think it's legitimate. From a practical perspective, this is basic boilerplate, as I think Jim Wood said, that is in all these contracts. I mean, have we ever had any occasion to see any of this invoked in terms of any sort of our contractual arrangements?
No.
No, I mean, that's what I was saying. I'm not sure what the legal risk is. I'm trying to think what we would be what they would need indemnification for. It's not as though they hire the subcontractors, or we just take the money and do the work.
No, but I mean, when we see this
I
in
can't
other,
remember that we ever had a claim filed, at least in my time here.
Not
but-
in any contract that I've managed.
okay.
Further discussion on the amendment? The amendment is to strike the second paragraph under section 14 titled indemnification, the paragraph beginning to the extent allowable by the law. Council ready to vote on the amendment?
The vote is 5 against, with Councilman Clark and Councilman Trujillo voting yes. The amendment fails.
Okay. That brings us to the main motion to approve the resolution, unamended. Ready to vote, council?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Clark voting no. The motion is approved.
That brings us to 7D, which is the annual appropriation ordinance, or in other words, our budgets and the mill levy setting.
And Mayor, I neglected to read the second ordinance of this
Okay.
group. So the second is an ordinance establishing the tax levy of 6.662 mills to defray the costs of municipal government and pay debt service of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1, 2011, and ending December 31, 2011.
Peggy. Oh, let me give an overview so people know what we're talking about. This is we do this every year. We approve our budget and set the property tax mill levy. The property tax mill levy has not changed since 1992. It's 6.662 mills. The general fund budget, which is part of the overall budget, it's the one that we do most of our expenditures out of and operates most of the day-to-day government. In 2011, we'll have a budgeted expenditure of just a little over $46 million. That's a reduction of $2 million from the 2010 budgeted expenditure amount. That still leaves us with about $211,000 difference between expenditures and revenues, with expenditures in 2011 being higher than the revenues by about $211,000. Peggy.
So at the pre-budget meetings that we had, you know that I wanted us to try to bring the expenditures totally, the estimated expenditures in line with the projected revenues. I think I was the only one that wanted to do that. And I'm not raising that issue again, but I did want to bring forth one of the items that I had put up on the whiteboard during the pre-budget discussion related to City Council, and that's the City Council travel and training budget. It is not a huge amount that I'm going to propose reducing our travel and training budget, and certainly a very tiny amount of the 2011 annual appropriation. But since we don't need that much money, I would like us to get closer to the amount that we actually need. So you want me to do a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, and I did email all of council this. This is not part, the details are not part of the motion, just the total figure. In the pre-budget, just for background, the travel and training budget, and
wait.
what is, excuse me?
Hang on a second. Bruce has reminded me by sign language that we really need a main motion to approve the budget before we do
Okay.
an amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Shall I?
Since you,
No.
yes. Why don't you,
There.
please?
Okay, I move that the 2011 annual appropriation ordinance be approved on first reading, setting the public hearing for November 16th, 2010, and publishing the proposed ordinance by posting at the Littleton Center, Bemis Library, Municipal Courthouse, and on the City of Littleton website.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the first reading of the appropriation ordinance and the first reading setting the mill levy ordinance.
Well, there's actually, do you want to
Could you read that motion?
Yeah, why don't you
too?
do the second one, too?
All right.
Sorry.
I further move that the tax mill levy ordinance be approved on first reading, setting the public hearing for November 16.
And on second
Th-
thought,
Those should be separate
on second
motions.
thought,
You want to do them separate?
yes, let's do
Yeah.
them separate.
I withdraw that motion then.
Again,
Glad we did that before we got the motion out.
Yeah.
Then we'd be tripping over Robert.
you'd only got, yes.
Yeah, it was a
yes.
partial
We'd
motion.
have two main motions, which we really don't want.
Good call.
All right. Now, we have a main motion on the floor. Peggy, why don't you make your amendment? Because you're amending the appropriation ordinance.
Yes. I want to reduce the appropriation by $6,050, specifically in the council travel and training budget, to reduce that amount from $20,350 to $14,300.
All right, if I may rephrase that for you, the motion is to reduce this city council travel and training budget for 2011 to $14,300.
Which would basically, just for clarification, be a reduction in the general fund appropriation.
Yes.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to amend the budget, reducing the travel and training to $14,300. Discussion.
So if I can comment just for the public, I did talk during the summer and then this week to various people in council about what they thought they would be wanted to travel, train, et cetera, for next year. And the amounts that I've included to get at the $14,300 reduction, the reduction of $6,050, I think is more than covers the requests that people have. So there's a little bit of slack and try to strangle the numbers that much. And it's a 29.73% reduction in our travel and training budget.
Further discussion. Council ready to vote. The vote. Oops, I'm sorry, Jim.
Peggy, I just think when you start dealing with minutia amounts of money, that you're not getting to the goal that you stated in the first place you wanted to have accomplished, it's just an exercise in futility. The estimated, dropping this by $6,000, what if it exceeds what you've got in the budget by $10? What are you going to do then? Turn it all down?
As I just said, I asked you specifically how much you thought you would need. The other amounts are more than adequate to cover, way more than adequate to cover the things that the other folks told me about. If by some chance it goes over, I'll take it out of my pocket and pay. We went through excruciating pain for the departments to try to get little bits of dollars here and there and wherever, and I'm trying to bring council's budget a little more closely to what we actually think it will be, and just make that gesture to the employees and the citizens of this city.
If you want to do something meaningful for council, why don't you talk about reducing council salaries? That would have a lot more impact to the budget than what this is going to do. You asked me what I thought I was going to be spending for the next year based upon what I spent this year. And I need to let you know that I covered my own travel costs to Washington, D.C. and to California for NLC meetings. I paid for most of the costs going to Texas and part of the costs going to Tennessee for the NLC meetings. It came out of my pocket. And therefore, if I put in the full amount of money that I could have done for all the trips I took, it would be more than this amount right now. And besides, I'm not through with expenditures this year either.
Well, I asked you, and you told me, and that's what this is based on.
Okay, any further discussion? Council ready to vote. The vote is on the amendment to reduce the travel and training to $14,300.
The vote is 3 in favor with Councilman Taylor, Councilman Clark, Councilwoman Brinkman, and Councilman Stallman voting no. The amendment is defeated.
All right, that brings us to the main motion on the appropriation ordinance. Any discussion on that? Council, ready to vote?
I voted.
I need one more on the tote board thing. Oh, the vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Stopping progress. Okay. Now, back to you, Bruce, if you want to make the second
All right.
motion on the ordinance.
I move that the tax mill levy ordinance be approved on first reading, setting the public hearing for November 16, 2010, and publishing the proposed ordinance by posting at the Littleton Center, Bemis Library, Municipal Courthouse, and on the City of Littleton website.
Second. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance on first reading setting the mill levy. Discussion on that?
Excuse, who seconded, please? Jose.
Jose.
Thank you.
And that's 7DB, I guess. All right, council, ready to vote?
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. That got us through our non-controversial consent agenda, which brings us to item 8A, which is an ordinance on second reading authorizing an agreement of a ground lease between South Suburban Parks and the City of Littleton.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, authorizing an amendment to the ground lease between South Suburban Parks and Recreation and the City of Littleton.
Council, very briefly, in 2002, the city purchased 2 parcels of land from Arapahoe County. Part of this was a joint project with the South Suburban Parks and Recreation District. We purchased land that was formerly the site of the old county jail and a small office building that fronts on Littleton Boulevard that had been used for some county administrative purposes. We then the city entered into a 50-year lease with the South Suburban Parks District, and they constructed the Douglas Buck Community Center that was part of funding that had been approved in 2000 bond issue, which is open and has been constructed there. The smaller parcel, which has been called the Sternberg Building after Eugene Sternberg, an architect who designed it, it was originally thought that we would demolish that building for parking for the recreation center. At that time, though, some council members raised questions about the potential historic significance of the building, and so we essentially mothballed the property. South Suburban, after about a year of operation, came back and advised us verbally that they did not need the parking, that the parking that they had for the center was sufficient. So from that time on, we've really pretty much had the building mothballed. We winterized it to take care of it. Our building maintenance guys have taken care of it, and it's been sitting there vacant since that point in time. Earlier this year at your annual workshop, the council discussed possible uses for that building. You instructed staff to put out a request for proposals to private investors to see if there was some interest in the private sector in perhaps either purchasing or developing that building. We did get 2 proposals. One was based on a joint venture in which the city would retain ownership. The second proposal from Littleton Capital Partners, LLC, was an outright purchase of the building. That's the option that the council chose, and you gave us instructions then to move ahead with negotiations with LLC, and we, in fact, have signed a option contract, a purchase contract with LLC. One piece of it that we need to take care of to remove any obstruction with that transaction is to amend the 50-year ground lease with South Suburban. Suzanne Start, our city attorney, has worked with the South Suburban attorneys. South Suburban, I believe, has approved the lease. I'm not sure.
They did.
The South Suburban Board has approved it. It essentially removes the Sternberg property from the 50-year lease, leaves the rest of the 50-year lease between the city and South Suburban in place. So it's a pretty simple amendment. Technically, it just removes that property. And so when we move ahead, we're in the due diligence period. If LLC decides to consummate their purchase, this amendment will be in place. We recommend it to you because even if the LLC doesn't move ahead, if we're going to continue to try to market the property, amending this lease with South Suburban would remove an encumbrance that we'd need to get rid of anyway. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Questions for Jim? All right, this is a public hearing. If anyone wants to come down and address us on this issue. See none, how about a motion?
I move that the ordinance authorizing the Second Amendment to the ground lease with South Suburban Parks and Recreation be approved on second reading, and that the council president be authorized to affix his signature thereto.
Second.
Jim.
There you go.
It's been moved by Phil and seconded by Jim to approve the ordinance on second reading, amending the ground lease. Discussion.
Amendment.
Sure.
I move to amend the first sentence of attachment 1 to include the date, which is the second day of November 2010.
Where are you?
Where are you at?
Attachment 1, first page, first line.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
The date,
where it's scratched
on
out.
top.
filling in the date.
In the first reading,
line.
it said September, so now it doesn't, we scratched out September, but there's no day or month. So all I want is to amend to include
Second day of November.
second day of November.
As of today.
Okay.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to amend the attachment 1, so it says second day of November 2010. Discussion on the amendment? Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Brings us back to the main motion, which is to approve the ordinance on second reading. Discussion? Council ready to vote? The amended main motion?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay, that gets us to 8B, which I believe I'm responsible for. This was postponed from 2 weeks ago. It's an ordinance on second reading enacting a section of the Littleton City Code relating to vehicle trespass.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending the city code with the addition of Section 6-4-40, motor vehicle trespass.
All right, council, as you know, I had a
Philosophical.
well, let's you know what, let's get a main motion before we start talking about amending it. So Debbie, you want to do the main motion?
I move that the ordinance adding section S-6-4-40 pertaining to motor vehicle trespass be approved on second reading, and the council president be authorized to sign the ordinance, and the ordinance shall be published by posting at the Littleton Center, Bemis Library, and Municipal Courthouse on the city website.
Second.
Okay, it's Deb and Peggy. This is officially a public hearing. However, I don't see anybody clamoring to come down. If you do want to come down, now would be the time of doing it. Okay. In that case, council, I'm going to move to change section, let's see, is it just a change?
It's a substitution, actually.
It's a substitution, okay.
Well, 6-4- different section now.
Okay, so we're getting rid of, all right. I move that we get rid of section 6-4-40 and add a section 6-4-1, trespassing, section C, which says it shall be unlawful for any person to knowingly enter or remain in a motor vehicle of another without authorization or by threat or deception.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. My reasoning for doing this is this explains what constitutes unlawfully being in a vehicle, which wasn't defined in the previous one.
So would you say your motion again?
The motion is to get rid of section 6-4-40, which was passed on first reading and part of the main motion, and to add a section 6-4-1, which is in the memorandum that Suzanne put on there. You see it? So it gets rid of the one that was adding a 6-4-40, and it replaces that by creating a new 6-4-1C.
And how does this square with is this the trespass that we have someplace else already in ordinance, right?
We already have a trespass that exists in an ordinance that actually would, my understanding, be applicable to automobiles as well as other types of property. However, the police department wants a separate section that they can cite this for, apparently so it can be tracked by CBI and other people, which was what the original main motion was to do. My problem with the original one was it defines vehicle trespass as of a person being unlawfully entering or remaining in a car, which basically means it's saying that it's unlawful to unlawfully be in a car, which I thought was a little vague. So this one basically says it's unlawful to be in a vehicle without the authorization to be in the vehicle, which is a simplification of our regular trespass.
Just in that, I'm presuming authorization could be provided on a tacit basis. So,
Yeah, it would be interpreted case by case.
right. And I know no one from the police department is here. This, from the attorney's perspective, this works.
It does work, and that's why I added going back to your previous question, that's why I added the knowingly enter. So, right, if you are in the car because the driver told you that it was his car and you didn't know, then that's your tacit, I guess, authorization. So I drafted this language, and I believe it complies with what you see in the motor vehicle theft statute. So it's kind of a hybrid of that one and our trespass ordinance. And I don't think it makes a substantive difference. I think it just clarifies it.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the amendment?
So I have a question. In the unlikely circumstance, the driver of the car has a heart attack or has a problem on the sidewalk before they get in, is not able to tell somebody, take my car and go whatever, and then has an accident or something. Is that person potentially going to be charged with unauthorized, and the person in the meantime dies on the sidewalk? That's unauthorized, because who's there to say somebody said that?
Well, you probably have a choice of evil's defense anyway, even if you got in that situation, which is the act of one was better than the other. But I think that you would probably find that there maybe was an authorization by emergency or this. I mean, a judge would have to rule on it each and every time, but you would have to be knowingly unauthorized. So if it was a circumstance where clearly the driver would have wanted you to, but for the fact that they were incapacitated, I guess, then you would make that argument in court. I can't imagine an officer charging that, but it even getting that far. But if it did, a judge would rule on that.
Thank you.
To bring everybody's recollection to the existing statute on trespass, what it says is if you enter into property without the permission of the owner or the occupant. So this is basically changing permission to authorization and removing the specificness of the owner or occupant. My big concern was getting what constituted unlawful entry, and I think that this gets to my point. So that was my big issue.
You didn't enjoy the double positive of unlawfully unlawfuling?
Yes. I didn't want to waffle on the unlawful. So any further discussion on the amendments? The amendment is to delete section 6-4-40 and replace it with the 641 that was previously read.
The vote is 7 in favor. The amendment's approved.
Which brings us back to the now amended main motion to approve an ordinance creating a section on motor vehicle trespass. Discussion on the main motion. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
That brings us to item 8C, which is another one that was postponed. This is an ordinance on second reading relating to the possession of cannabis. If you could read this by title, please.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending the city code with the addition of a new subsection to 6-4-34, possession of cannabis definition.
And as a basic overview, I believe that this was an ordinance to create a fee related to the destruction or disposal of marijuana or paraphernalia related to marijuana. Bruce.
Yeah, that's correct. I think again, to go back 2 weeks ago, I had suggested tabling this or motion that we postpone this to allow the police department to go back and do more of a full cost estimate of what is involved with all of the additional overhead and incremental charges that may be incurred as a result of this, to basically ascertain if the $25 was effectively sufficient. And actually, they've provided some of that, and I've actually got amendment language as well I was going to pass around
Okay.
to
All right.
cover this. So go ahead.
Let's get the motion first. Oh, I'm sorry.
Public hearing.
This is a public hearing. If anyone wants to come down
Need a
and,
motion to put it on the table before we do the public hearing?
No. Public hearing goes first.
well, normally we do the hearing first, although we reversed the order last time. So if anyone wants to come down and address us, now would be the time to do it. Seems none. Now in motion.
I move the ordinance amending Littleton City Code Section 6-4-34, adding a new subsection, be approved on second reading. Council President be authorized to sign the ordinance. The ordinance shall be published by posting Littleton Center, Bemis Library, Municipal Courthouse, and city website.
And I second that, although Councilmember Stallman's going to gut it.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve our ordinance on second reading relating to possession of marijuana and paraphernalia. Bruce.
I'd like to make a motion to not necessarily gut it, but to change the $25 to $50, with the logic for that being that there are incremental costs above the direct cost involved of incineration and supplies, and in particular the costs as detailed here with additional language that City Attorney Steyer provided don't include the cost of property technician time as far as maintaining, preparing the property for destruction, nor the costs of the auditing involved in maintaining and destroying controlled substances. I think $50 is reasonable as covering some of these incremental costs as far as a court-ordered destruction is concerned.
Question for the city manager: given the average number of cases involved, does the additional $25 cover these costs that weren't included in the police department's estimates?
I actually not real clear reading this as to whether all of them involve destruction of paraphernalia. Did they clarify that?
No, the cost of the incineration is for paraphernalia related to cannabis and also paraphernalia related to other controlled substances. So this is a two-time destruction, not just for things that are written into our municipal court, but also for felonies. And I talked to the police department about this, and they asked whether they needed to be here tonight, and I felt that given that this was a continued reading, I told them that I'd be happy to answer the questions that would come up. But what there are some broad costs, and it's very hard to break them down just for cannabis because a lot of this equipment is required anyways. I mean, you see that we're building a new police facility for the holding of evidence. Evidence must be held for a certain amount of time, and there are going to be incremental costs with that. Whether this covers the entire amount, I doubt it. There are extensive audit requirements for controlled substances. I can't remember how many times they have to report those, but to ensure that controlled substances go through a chain of custody and you can account for every gram up to the point of destruction is a very extensive and expensive staff process. So I don't know that this would cover all of it, but I certainly think it would be a reasonable amount when we consider those, quote, soft costs.
And I guess just for council, this is not something that's now and forever. I mean, if we get more operational experience and it is more expensive, we could always come back to you with more actual destruction evidence and perhaps increase raising it. But I agree with Suzanne. I think the $50 is probably a reasonable place to start. If it's not fully covering our costs, we could always come back to you and recommend that it be increased.
All right, for completeness, Deb.
I second the motion.
Okay.
I apologize. I started getting carried away.
It's been moved and seconded to
Explanation.
amend section
That was a very long motion.
6434 to change the $25 to $50. Jim.
Mr. Woods, when you were speaking just now, were you talking about when the fine was at the $25 level or at the new $50 level that's being proposed, from what you said about the cost of the operations of the department?
I'm just speaking in general. As Suzanne said, I think it's a little difficult for them to break it down specifically to the destruction of the cannabis.
He said $50.
So,
That's what I heard him say.
sorry.
Okay, I got
To
you.
the feeling, you felt that the $50 was
A reasonable place to start. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's what I
I'm
wanted
sorry.
to hear.
If I didn't hear your question correctly, I'm supporting the $50.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
It is election night.
So I do have a question. This is not just for the cannabis, it's also the paraphernalia and so forth.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and then the time maintaining the property, getting everything ready, those costs weren't included. It would seem to me those might be significant costs for, handling, storing, getting ready, and so forth. And I thought that was part of what we were asking for, kind of like the inspections of the rental units and so forth, to see what actually costs us in terms of doing this.
Well, and that's true, and I can tell you that some of the discomfort from the police department of trying to break down that exact cost or to try to recoup that exact cost is that essentially the people who are written into municipal court pay the cost. The people with the more serious offenses who go to district court don't pay the cost. And so from their perspective, they were also trying to be fair in that these are relatively minor offenses where we are recouping, and those that are more serious are...
So that a more expensive process would probably end up in a district court.
Right.
Okay,
And
thank you.
they're not contributing that amount, and how much, from their perspective, it wouldn't be fair to ask the people who are just charged with marijuana to bore the entire cost of drug destruction because that's just a minor part of what they take and keep in store.
And so as they proceed, might they have some records, keep some records that would differentiate that to give us some input, let's say in a year, to see if it's worth...
Well, that's what I was suggesting in response to Mr. Cernanic's
Well,
question.
right, but that was I thought that was a piece of the larger piece I was asking, but maybe I misunderstood.
I guess
so.
I just intended it as a general,
Okay,
that,
okay.
we
I
may
just
be able
wanted
to
to
get a better handle on that depending on the number of cases and those actual disposition costs, particularly once, it's probably starting at the first of the year when they start to occupy the new evidence and crime labs. So we will have those destruction processes up and running.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
If someone has insufficient means to pay this amount, in addition to what typically happens?
They don't destroy the product.
They go ahead and destroy it anyway. And then the person could tell the judge up front, I don't have the means, and the judge would have the ability maybe to reduce the fine or to assign community service. There are some other remedies that are available.
Or we're not creating a debtor's prison?
Hope not. And I think our previous IGA that we just adopted with Arapahoe County, their hope is that we will create less debtors' prisons and more community service participants.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment to the main motion, which changes the $25 amount to $50. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 5 in favor with Councilman Clark and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion's approved.
Okay, that brings us back to the main motion, which is a ordinance establishing a surcharge for persons convicted of marijuana or paraphernalia. Discussion on that. Council, I'm going to vote against this because we have a council policy that says we will not use municipal court for revenue generation, and I'm in that kind of mood tonight. So, any other discussion?
Yeah, can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
How, in your head, does that square with what is it, fees? I know fees are different for code stuff, because we're recovering costs there, and it seems to me that all we're doing is recovering costs, not making money this way.
Well, if you're asking my logic, there's a difference between a fee and a fine. A fine is a charge that's levied through the court system, and in my viewpoint, the purpose of the fine is to discourage the behavior that we are trying to prohibit or discourage for public safety concerns. I can't see any difference why we should treat this particular type of crime different than any other crime that our police department handles and that goes through the court system. And law enforcement costs us money, as does running the court. And we don't try and recoup portions of the fee or the cost for processing other types of crimes, so I don't know why we've picked this one out, but that's my personal feeling.
Thank you.
Sure.
For the mayor, what would be the fine level to discourage behavior?
Pardon?
What would be the fine?
Up to $1,000 and or a year in jail. Although I believe that for possession, we're limited if it's, less than 2 ounces?
Ours is actually less than an ounce.
Less than an ounce, we're limited to a maximum of $100. I think that's the state thing.
Right.
So,
We could go up to 2 ounces at this point if
okay.
council ever wanted to.
So the state, I believe the state statute says that if you run this through the state courts and it's 2 ounces or less, it's a maximum fine of $100. If we go through municipal court, apparently it's 1 ounce or less. I guess if it's above 1 ounce, then we run through the state courts. Is that the story?
Right now it is. That was only amended last year,
Okay.
up to 2 ounce.
And do we have the $100 fine for the 1 ounce or below?
Yes,
I have some vague memory of that last year or the year before.
we do.
Okay. So this basically adds $50 to a $100 fine. Further discussion? Council ready to vote on the amended main motion, which sets a $50 surcharge?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Clark voting no. The motion's approved.
I see a trend. All right.
He's going for the landslide tonight.
Yes. There's a certain virtue and consistency. That brings us to item 9A, which is a discussion on the agenda for presiding judge meeting next Tuesday, November 9th. And council, we have 2 items, actually 3 items we have a meeting with the presiding judge for next Tuesday the 9th. We are doing Jim Wood's evaluation, and we have scheduled an executive session on something that I don't remember what it's on right now, but...
Union contract.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We need to brief you on that.
But what I thought would be beneficial is when we meet with the judge to kind of set what it was that we wanted to discuss. And what I'm going to suggest to you, and this is just my suggestion, is that we ask the judge to describe to us the schedule through the week of what happens in the court, what happens on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, who's in the court, who does various functions, and then to discuss the different types of crimes or actions that the court hears. We know there's traffic offenses, there's potentially code violations. I don't know if there's anything through the library anymore, and then other types of offenses. And that gives us some structure for having the discussion. As we discuss those different items, then there may be issues that come up, and or if the judge wants to add anything or any council person wants to add anything, then we could do that. Jim.
I would be very interested, even though I know that he's been sitting for a very short period of time, if there's any gaps in our ordinances that we should try to address in some manner. He may see something that says the court could work in a more efficient manner if this were there in place to bring it before him. And he may not have any answers for that, but at least having the opportunity to talk about that.
Okay. Bruce.
The other Bruce.
Phil.
Thank you. Also, would like to hear what mechanisms are in place to review the ongoing operation among the folks that are involved in the administration of the court, and how ideas are brought forward to improve both the efficiency and the effectiveness that's there. So not just the ordinances, but maybe the process that items are looked at, how that occurs, and recognizing that spans a number of the organizations that the council oversees. Any thoughts or ideas as to what the council can be doing to help as well?
And I'm not arguing against anything here, but I want to remind us all that we have a limited amount of time on next Tuesday, and hopefully we'll have more than one meeting. So, that's fine to put on. I don't know if there's anything, Judge, that you think needs to be discussed, or if you think that we should go a different direction.
Good evening. I had actually put down 15 different topics, but some of these, 4 of them are long-term issues that you may want to do it another day. I anticipate that we'll be meeting regularly to cover issues like this. Some of these are personnel issues. I think everything that I heard here in terms of suggestions were things I had on my list as well. A few other things like the community service contract that you just approved, I didn't know if that was going to go through tonight or not. That was on my list.
That was pretty good. We were able to knock some items off before they got to us.
The fine schedule, which I've talked to you about before, the bond schedule, which I talked to you about before, coverage, the on-call procedure, which I think we talked about the last time I was here. So there are several type of things that I kind of wanted to update you on. They might not take all that long. I anticipate that some of the other ones, including the court staffing, the workflow that you're talking about here, would probably take a little bit longer time. I don't know if these items are something that you would need to deal with. Certainly the long-term ones involving the file system, the recording system, courthouse security, and the computer software for the court are issues that we're not going to resolve next week. They're implemented over a longer period of time, will take a good deal of investigation. The funding is an issue on these things, and so that may not be something that you would really want to deal with given the amount of time that we'll have to talk about these things.
Well, if you guys are all right, I think on-call is probably something that we need to address because that's kind of an immediate operational issue. The reason I suggested the weekly schedule, what happens through the week, is because we had some discussion about what we expected to be accomplished in the standardized hours that our contract calls out that we're going to pay. And I'm not sure, after having a short discussion with the judge, how realistic that is. So I thought it'd be good for us to go through the schedule of what happens in the court during the week. And then just as an overview, that was the reason why I was looking at the different types of offenses. And the other thing that we need to decide, I don't want to change something, let's stop here, is, Deb.
On that subject, perhaps we could handle it a bit like we do our study session topics. And we may have a list of a bunch of things, and we kind of prioritize those and then plug them in. And since we have made we do have an intention to meet with the judge on a more frequent basis, maybe one of the agenda items is to go over your agenda list, and then if any of us may have a few items that we may want to talk about, and we kind of calendar those over the next months, or determine also at that point a frequency of meeting. And so maybe it's kind of a chance to do a little bit of housekeeping on how we move forward and the topics we go through.
Is that all right with everybody? Judge?
That's fine.
Okay. Second issue is who should be there. And obviously, the judge, us. I'm going to assume Jim and Phil, Cortez and Suzanne. Do we need the other judges? Do we need Pat or the clerks or the prosecutor? And, after I thought about it, my initial recommendations is just for the first meeting, the presiding judge and us and Jim and Suzanne and Phil Cortez. And then after we run through one of those, maybe we'll decide, after we get our list of what we want to do, that we need
May
other.
plug certain people in for certain topics. They don't have to stay the whole time. Come in for that one and leave. Chief may be one of those.
Okay. Is that all right with everybody?
I'd also like to look to Suzanne and Jim and the judge and say, does that sound okay as a first go-through? Not have the throngs.
I believe so.
Okay. All righty. We have a decision. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. That brings us to our very brief reports.
I have nothing.
Very good.
And I don't either.
Very good. Jose.
I just would like you to know that I was very happy to see this Greater Littleton Youth Initiative Blueprint Program and data and outcomes here. And they're all self-explanatory, and the GYL is probably one of the most important programs that we support. A lot of that has to do with suicides amongst kids and family programs for young ladies that have children and no husband, and they get a education from the nurses, et cetera, as to how to go through life, and these do help them a lot. So I was just glad to see that it was here from GLYI. Other than that, that's it.
Bruce.
Very briefly, the Fine Arts Committee met on the 21st. I can't remember if I mentioned this at one point or not, but the Randy Hand sculpture that was purchased of the Caterpillar was voted. The committee voted to place it in Stern Park, and I think they're then working with Charlie and South Suburban to determine the location within Stern Park. I believe it's proximate to the lake, so that'll be coming back around. The Littleton Fire Protection District meeting was held on the 25th of October, and essentially a lot of the sort of relatively similar kinds of stuff that have been coming through in terms of notice transparency. There was a postcard that was sent out with the resolution from the board to the constituents regarding Amendment 6061 and Proposition 101. It's my understanding a draft of the ESCI report was reviewed in executive committee by the district and the board last Thursday, and to my knowledge, there's not been any feedback or comment from them.
I've not received anything as of the end of business today.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So it's still pending, as I understand it at this point.
As far as I know,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Okay. Let me see very, very briefly. Oh, I know what I was going to do. Yeah, I want to do it just because you have to do the merchant plug of the week. I mean, it just wouldn't be council, notwithstanding it'll be quick because I'm getting the evil eye from about 6 other people up here. However, I did actually talk to these guys, and they are a fine District 3 merchant, so Phil, that should help. Alpine Trophies actually is located in the old Mission Trujillo restaurant location at Broadridge, at the Broadridge Shopping Center or shopping area at Ridge Road and Broadway. Founded in 1971 by Craig Bailey, who's done an awful lot of good within the community. Basically, they pride themselves on customer service and really being getting to know the customer, finding out what the customer wants, customizing products, and frankly, if you can figure out something that you want as an award or as a trophy or as a ceremonial gift of some sort, these guys can basically get it created, either make it themselves or make arrangements. According to the website, it says just tell us what you want or need, give us a budget, let us know the impression you want to create. Whether you're after a total wow, a memorable trade show giveaway, an impressive tournament trophy, or recognition of participation, service, performance, production, or achievement, and we'll figure out a way to help you out. Phone number is 303-798-2511, and their tagline is Alpine Trophies, the company that cares, and that's very legitimate. That's all I've got.
Debbie?
A little one. I just have some really good news. There's a lot of events going on at the museum. I encourage you to go to the littletongov.org website, gov.org, and check it out. They're coming up in the next couple of weeks. But the museum set a new record for monthly attendance, 46,938 in October, which was up from 28,536. And they are attributing the fine weather we've had in October. So that's amazing. All of their revenues are up at this point, too. So, and still seeing record crowds coming through. So that's good stuff. And then I have a report on South Platte Working Group, which I'll give on the November 16th meeting.
Okay, Jim.
Thank you. I'm going to give to staff tonight information known that may help the Community Development Department with some of their comp plans. This is having to do with accessory dwelling units. They may want to take a look at that, about incorporating it somewhere into our code. This will allow homeowners to be able to age in place, and that's going to be an important thing coming up in our community. And second thing is we do have breakfast Thursday morning with our high school students at the Service Center.
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding us.
No, that's
Not
that's
this
the 18th.
Thursday.
18th.
It's not next week?
No.
Boy, am I glad about that.
18.
I'm looking at the people that know around here, Jim. The 18th.
And then, if I could say also the 23rd with the Hudson Gardens Board.
Oh, yes. 23rd in the morning, Hudson Gardens, 18th in the morning.
I'm glad you clarified that, because I have it on my calendar for Thursday morning.
You could have been here and had breakfast.
All by myself. That's all I got.
One quick item that relates to calendaring. I know that we have an item to take a look at outcomes-based measures for a study session. In this past week, I spoke with Tom Miller, who's with the Centennial City Council and has been instrumental in their adoption of that. Todd's quite willing to come to a Tuesday evening session, but we need to kind of strike while the iron is hot to get him on the calendar. So to help in the calendaring event, I didn't want to wait on that. And other than that, we could look for the trophy folks to replicate Stephen Colbert's medals with Keeping Fear Alive, which featured a naked man running with scissors.
Sure. I missed that.
Peggy.
Okay,
Sounds bad.
two things. First, I want to thank anybody who happens to be watching for exercising their right to vote in today's election. Then, on a really much more serious note, I'd like us to add as soon as possible to our study session something in response to the presentation by the code people last Tuesday night. We all knew that there were some problems in the Northeast neighborhood with some of the apartments and whatever, but I had no idea there were issues that potentially endanger people's lives with the exposed electrical things and so forth. And I know code follows a practice usually of giving, let's say, 30 days to correct something and then some more time. But it seems to me something that endangers people's lives, as some of that stuff surely did, needs to have a more rigorous approach and maybe a summons and immediate action so that those things don't happen to begin with, let alone need to be straightened up when they do. So I'd like council to look at that. I did talk to our attorney about this issue. So I just think we need to deal with that.
Okay. Jim?
Dr. Cog, Board of Directors met on the 20th of October and approved some wastewater plans. We adopted the budget. We expanded the Advisory Committee on Aging membership, approved $300,000 seed money for CDOT to allow work on intergovernmental agreements, pre-signing of intergovernmental agreements. And the short course dates were announced. February the 9th is transportation, March the 9th is Metrovision, and April 13th is on aging. The administrative committee also met, and we adopted agreements on the Western High-Speed Rail, the Front Range travel counts, and the AAA funding cycle procedures.
Okay. And I'd like to point out that December 8th is going to be Colorado Gives Day. That is a day where you can go to a website, www.givingfirst.org, select one or more charities that you want to give to, donate any amount that you want, and the processing fees will be picked up by First Bank, who's helping sponsor this. So for 24 hours, basically right after midnight on December 8th through the rest of the day, that's a day that is hopefully going to encourage people to give to the charity of their choice. Last time I looked at the website, there's 300 and some odd charities. You can pick whichever one you want to and choose whatever amount that you want to. And once again, First Bank, who's one of the big sponsors, will do the processing. You can donate either with credit card or through a bank transfer from your account. And if there's no other business, we are adjourned.